You ready, Nicholas?
Yeah, we're all set.
It's 12 o'clock, we'll call the meeting to order. Has everybody had a chance to look over the minutes of the previous meeting?
Sure. Move to approve.
We got a motion approved?
I'll second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you. We'll move on to our financial report.
No major changes in the financial report. One thing to note is the payment for contractual services to CEDA. And on loans, businesses have been paying on time. It looks like Main Street Fitness is behind, but I spoke with the finance department and they made a payment after the report was made, so they're up to date.
Okay. Any other questions for Nicholas on that? Well, we'll move on to our Dodge County Youth Hockey presentation.
Guess that's me. I have a little thing here for you to look at. My name is CJ. I'm with Dodge County Youth Hockey. I've been a board member for not quite a year yet, but I've been in the association. My oldest son graduated just a couple of years ago, played his whole life in Dodge County. So I've definitely been around the system for a while. There you are. So we'll just kind of get started here. 25 years ago, there was a need and demand for an ice facility to accommodate local youth hockey programs. The current Four Seasons Arena provided a low-cost opportunity to provide that need via the Mighty Ducks program back in 1995, is the way I believe it was. At that time, I learned that the cost of the rink for the association was around $650,000. I believe that was not including any grants, donations, or anything via the Mighty Ducks program, so I'm not sure what the actual total cost of the building was. It has definitely served its purpose over these few years. It was paid off in 2007, is what I am to understand. So ever since then, it's been a plus or minus the way it sounds, depending on numbers of children skating and income and such. Right now, we've got around 230 to 270 skaters registered. From the mite level all the way up to the bantam level. It does not include any of our high school skaters. That is not a part of our association. That is, the high school is its own entity. With that, there's probably 45, 50, you suppose, Mike? Between boys and girls, JV varsity.
Well, there's almost 40 on each.
Yeah, so you'll probably
70, 80.
Yeah. So that number puts us around the 320 mark for kids using this one sheet of ice. We're looking to continue growing our program at every level. Right now, our Bantams, which is our division before high school, usually start their practices about 9 o'clock at night. They did put a cutoff on that ending time to be 10 o'clock. About 6 or 7 years ago, one of my son's teammates fell asleep in school because he had practice till 10:30. So whether it was the city, I'm not sure, the association decided that it was time to make that cutoff, which is actually hindered our ice time for children to be able to use. It's just made it less available for kids, and we shouldn't be that late anyway. We shouldn't need to be skating that late. Anyway, kids need their sleep. So we're expecting continued growth. We have a gentleman in our association who's a junior this year who has already committed playing D1 hockey with Minnesota Gophers and has had communications with levels above him as well. So we hope that is a huge, I wouldn't say flag, but a huge border for us to see, for kids to see and say, hey, I want to be like him. I want to skate for Dodge County and I want to be just like him. So the girls are the same way. The girls program for many years has been producing many Division I and Division III college talent skaters. So definitely looking to add on, get more kids in our association, and with more kids, we will need more room. Hence coming here today. Purpose of our plan is to raise right around $12.9 million to build a new ice arena facility within the city limits of Casson. Organization heading up the program will be us at Dodge County Youth Hockey, which we seek to partner with well-known corporate entities, widely respected in the community, not just our community, but in southeast Minnesota as well. We'll work with the partners to develop hockey, skating, and athletic training facility that will also include food and beverage concessions, as well as hosting events throughout the year. Increased visitors to the city will provide additional opportunities to establish new business and increase traffic and revenue for existing businesses. The actual rink itself, the main idea, which you can see that on the back 3 pages, is our suggested layout. We've been dealing with JLG Architects out of the cities, based out of Fargo. They designed many hockey rinks around the state and around the Midwest. They are in the process of building one down in Coralville, Iowa, for the University of Iowa club hockey team that hopes to be in the Big Ten here soon. They base this model off of what they have already built for West Fargo. West Fargo was built in aspects of city health and school entities. There's 2 high schools that use the rink, so there's quite a bit of school donation and school usage of it as well. So that's where the size of the rink and the base of the rink comes to. Phase 1, we're looking at just building one main sheet of ice, 85 by 200, that'll seat about 1,000 to 1,200 spectators. That'll be our nicer rink, per se, our high school rink. We can have practices there. We can hold some tournaments with using the old facility as well. That will be able to facilitate everything we have right now. This phase also includes dryland training, so off-ice training, any weight room training, just plain general locker rooms, high school locker rooms, restrooms, and everything that goes with that, along with the public lobby area. In that public lobby area, there is viewing onto the ice. We'll be able to stay in the lobby area and still be able to watch a game, per se. That's just as a phase 1 in the 3 to 5 year period. Phase 2 would be within that 3 to 5 years, say after the 3rd or 4th year. Phase 2 would add an additional 85 by 200 foot rink with seating for only about 200 spectators. That would definitely be our youth rink, more of a practice rink. When it gets to be the younger age levels, more parents than anything. We don't get a lot of outside people just coming to watch a kid skate, because it is kind of boring. So phase 3 would be an addition of a community room that could be utilized by the public for board meetings or birthday parties and such like that, any kind of business meeting. There will be skate rentals at the facility with public skating, which is more open with 2 new sheets rather than the single sheet we have, where when it comes to skating season from, say, September-ish, October to February, March, there's no open ice time. If there is, it's a game cancellation, it's a practice cancellation. Right now, these times are a little different with the social distancing and everything that's going on, so there's certainly not as many people at the rink, but ice time is filling up very, very quickly as we get into the season. So having that extra sheet is very, very beneficial in that aspect, to be able to help the community to be able to get in and just open skate or have more practices. With that second rink, we would be more inclined to be able to get youth tournaments. Right now, we are not in a situation to host a lot of youth tournaments because of the number of kids that would come in and the number of parents. With, say, 16 teams and you've got 12 kids per team, you're looking at 160 skaters alone, let alone 2 parents apiece, and our one sheet of ice just can't facilitate that. So we don't really get to schedule any youth tournaments. With scheduling youth tournaments, we're going to bring business to Quick Trip, Casey's, Subway, the new bakery, the Hubble House, the saloon, Pete's, every aspect of every business in town. The new Hy-Vee would see a gross increase in revenue for that side of it. When it comes to financing, there's definitely several options that we are looking into to finance such a project, and we're open to exploring all options, including raising private capital through sponsorships, donations, or partnerships, public-private partnerships, management partnerships, where Park and Rec, local school districts, private facilities, or other city projects provide management services, government community grants, gifts and donations, both public and private. And we will have additional details, if the proposal can continue to move forward as far as how we can facilitate getting that funding. So that is my small spiel. On a side note, that's not really in the writing that we came up with. Again, I've been around. My son started in 2000, probably 2007, 2008. He started skating as a super mice. Ice time was very limited then, as it is now for the youth. Our younger kids that are in that, say, 3-4 year age up to 7, 8, 9 years old are only getting about 2 days a week of ice time. We are getting into a third night that we're trying to work out. The difficulty with that is it's church night, and church is important. Don't get me wrong, we need to skate too and have fun, but church is important, and so that puts a hindrance on when we can get these kids on the ice. So with having that second sheet of ice, it definitely gives us more opportunity to have more practices, to be able to compete at a higher level from high school on down to our MITE program, and build skill development and camaraderie with being able to do that. So, any questions?
DJ, with regard to the financing, do you maybe wanna tell everybody about the charitable gambling? Would you wanna discuss that at all?
Yep, so that is definitely one of our great, subsidiaries in our association is charitable gambling. And with that, we actually have, Pete's is our largest one, and that gets into, cardboard or paper pull tabs, and then electronic e-tabs. We get a certain percentage of that. The association that hosts that, or the establishment that hosts that, gets a certain percentage of that as well, and then the state, of course, gets the majority of that, which doesn't surprise anyone. We have been in talks with a couple of other establishments. Right now, we actually just lost the Bears Den in Byron. They want to be able to donate their funds to Byron, which is absolutely understandable. They want to keep things within their association, and that's what we want to do. We want to be able to get somewhere within Dodge County so we can keep it within Dodge County hockey. So right now, we are down to just one establishment, but it is a very fulfilling establishment. It does help us out immensely with extra ice time, extra uniforms, things that we don't have originally budgeted in, that come out of the registration of the parents.
Any discussion you wanna talk about as far as being a co-op, meaning that it's just not to benefit Caston and Manderville kids? We're pulling kids from
Yep,
a
so
lot of different communities.
as our youth association it is a Dodge County co-op. We have, every town in Dodge County is associated with our hockey program, including Pine Island, Mazeppa, Zumbrota. I don't know if EOTA is still around, because there was a girl at that point in time. I think they've since dropped out. Orinoco is in that range where they can be associated with Rochester, or if they're in a certain part of Orinoco, they can be associated with Dodge County as well. But we service about, or have in our association, roughly 10 schools, I believe, 8 to 10. So this wouldn't just associate gaining cash in itself, it would help with other communities as well. Having that extra ice time might get 2 or 3 more parents in Hayfield to say, let's try out hockey, and we have more time to get there. We can do more public skating and try it out, because there's that extra sheet that is available for that. So absolutely. And as you may or may not be able to see on the map, what we've talked about is land right next to the cemetery right out here, right next to west of Quick Trip. That is kind of where the layout of this rink sits. As I was told, it is city property, and we would be definitely interested in working with the city to figure out how we can make that our establishment. We have Shields is a very large sponsor for our youth, as far as helping sponsoring teams, equipment, and stuff like that. They have shown interest in maybe being a bigger part of our association, and if that were the case, we would love to have their name next to the highway and have that, give them more advertisement, better advertisement.
I do have one question,
Yes.
please. In your summary, you mentioned events throughout the year. Now, I know, maybe 5 or 6 years back, that the rink was open to, a business expo.
Mm-hmm.
Are those types of events you would be able to hold? I don't know, I think they drained all the ice out or something.
So at that time, they did. They used to drain the ice out, then it got to be a situation where they didn't do that anymore. They actually had foam padding they would put down for, say, the fair. That is definitely not out of the realm of possibility. With 2 sheets, we would still be able to leave one in and use one for, say, a market or an expo or something like that. With the Case IH dealer right there, it would be really great for them to be able to have something indoors, have a tractor show, or have, something for them agricultural wise to be able to use that in the summertime, if needed.
how much, money do you guys already have allocated? Do you?
As far as saved?
Yeah, so we know, what your kind of game plan is.
Well, you know, it's, right now our budget is in the midst of being updated, we'll put it that way. There's only so much we can carry over every year as being a nonprofit organization. So no matter how much we say we wanna save, or we say we can save, we're in, you know, I don't know a strong number, I know it's under I'm fairly positive it's under $100,000 a year that we can only carry over to still be in that, nonprofit organization structure that we're in. I know there's different tiers of that, but I also don't wanna say that we're not saving anything.
Right.
Cause we certainly are, and we're trying to make things work. With having the gambling certainly helps out, because that is something that, can be directed right to that, say, mortgage payment or ice time, or however you wanna say it, or it's a complete separate entity from, registration fees for hockey players.
CJ, along the lines of the year-over-year saving, I mean, have you guys looked at any kind of like endowment structures? I know, like, for example, our Rochester Foundation will host kind of endowment structures that allow for kind of like a nonprofit tool for carryover of savings. Just thinking about you know, if you're planning on doing a $12.9 million ice arena construction project, I imagine saving and building that endowment's gonna be really critical.
Right, so, that will probably be more dependent on what our sponsors are willing to help us out with, as far as to be able to get to that base number of, then we need to learn where we need to go from there, is how I would kinda expect that. I'm unfortunately not the financial guy. My associate, Nick Davidson, who is the financial guy, had a family engagement up in the city that he was unable to make it today, so, that is something that he would be better to explain with. I can't answer that, I'm sorry.
No, I mean, that's fine. I just think it's, if you haven't discussed it, it's, I think, worth looking into though.
Right, okay, for sure.
And then, I mean, first of all, I mean, some of my earliest memories are, from when the ice arena was brand new, and, I was a little guy skating over there, so, you know, I think it's, good. Now, I think, just so I understand, there seems to be kind of, I don't know, maybe three main purposes behind the presentation, just in terms of the EDA. The first would be the land is kind of the site location, is the big one. The second one would be, I guess, for input on maybe like, some of like the financing options in terms of especially like public-private sponsorships and grants, and then the third would just be for our knowledge. Am I just understanding the purpose of this correctly?
Yeah, I mean, we're just kind of presenting this to you guys so that we can, you know, see where we need to go from here. You know, this is our first step, and, you know, what's our next step? That's kind of where, you know, we got involved with EDA.
I think that's a pretty succinct way of putting it, Tom. Those are kind of the three concerns that I know when we met with them a little earlier this year, that was one of the reasons we wanted to come to the EDA, is, the land was one primary reason, because the EDA has kind of been taking a look at it. And then we did feel like if there were any kind of tax incentives that we would, utilize, that recommendation would probably come from the EDA, if there was some kind of, you know, recommendation would come forward to the council, whether it's a tax abatement or a TIF or something like that. So I think that's kind of why we did initiate this at this level, so just to give them some feedback on what you guys think, and, you know, for us as staff to know where you guys are at too, because that seems like a prudent way to go.
Would they, I mean, so, yeah, I mean, if we were using a tax structure, because I'm just thinking about the financing of the infrastructure, since we got that on the agenda, this being a nonprofit-owned facility, though, isn't gonna necessarily generate any property taxes unless there's a voluntary
It may or may
assessment.
not. I mean, it's a tax-generating business, so typically what I've seen in my own experience is when it's a tax-generating business, even if it's run by a nonprofit, it still pays property taxes. So
Okay.
for like, for example, even the city, when we have, tax-generating, you know, we have taxable businesses, they pay taxes, so.
Okay.
So, yeah, but that is a concern, that's a valid concern. Obviously, before we would do any kind of TIF or anything like that, we'd have to go to the assessor and say, you know, they're saying it's gonna cost $12.9 million to build, that doesn't mean that it's gonna be valued at that.
Right.
So to give us a good valuation and how that would work before we do anything. But no, that's a good concern, but, I mean, from my understanding of it is that typically if they're tax generating, they pay taxes, so.
Okay.
Otherwise, it becomes impossible to
Right.
have the large scale tip that we would be looking for, so.
Right. So, okay. No, I mean, I think that'd be my main concern is gonna be twofold, which is, yeah, what is the, kinda like the taxable value of it going to be?
Sure.
'Cause I think that usually when I've talked to Ryan Cook on issues like this, there's kind of a blend of tax valuation that happens.
Mhm.
So, one, creating enough financial stream essentially to finance infrastructure, and then secondly, I imagine this is gonna be a larger infrastructure requirement in terms of electric, water, sewer. When you're talking, you know, having seating for 1,200 spectators, I mean, I'd imagine we're gonna just need a larger line getting out there, meaning that we're gonna need, I mean, we just have to figure out what the
Yeah, I mean, I think,
requirements are.
our city engineer would be a better person to talk to about that, but I know that in the past, when we discussed it, we kinda looked at this map as a two-phase, sort of the southern tier and then the northwest tier, which would probably necessitate some infrastructure coming on the north road as opposed to what we might run from South Manorville Drive. So there would be some upgrades needed for that. I don't know that it would be anything larger than a regular street reconstruction. I mean, I don't know that we'd have to upsize lines or anything like that, just because of the number of people potentially in this location, but I do think that, that's something we'd certainly take a look at. I don't know if you had anything you wanted to add on that right off, Brandon?
No, I guess since we're kinda jumping around, I do have that figure that I handed out, I think everybody got one. We do not have sewer and water to that parcel, so you can see we're running water and sewer down 8th Street, which is kind of the center part of Windsor Court there, along the north side of the cemetery to kinda get to that area of that parcel, so that would be a pretty significant water and sewer extension to get over there, along with reconstructing that road. I just did some real quick math, so don't quote me on that, on this, but, looking at about $800 to $1 million to kinda rebuild 8th Street and then come up to 240th to get to the access that's shown there.
Sure.
Along the west side of that property, so there's gonna be a significant investment to get that water and sewer out there and rebuild that road. Part of that road along the west side is an aggregate roadway, I think it's still probably in the township, and then 8th there is in pretty poor condition, so it's been on our radar, with respect to street reconstruction, so. It's gonna be a pretty significant investment to make it ultimately buildable, the site itself buildable to get us out there, so. And again, it was $800 to about $1 million, I'm just roughing some stuff in my phone every week as we're talking, so.
Yeah.
DJ, one last question.
Yes.
The 12.9, I'm assuming that's the total of the 3 phases? if
That
we're
is the
breaking
total
out?
of all 3 phases, yes.
Any idea broken out to get going, phase 1?
So phase 1 in the rink, we would probably look into the $8 to $9 million range. That will get you the 1,200 spectators, 1,000 to 1,200 spectators, the larger lobby. Adding the second rink and the third phase, adding the second rink will still be in that probably $4 to $5 million. And I say that with the aspect of, once a construction company leaves, and 2 or 3 years down the road, they come back to build again, then they've gotta set everything back up again. My eyes, again, my hopes and dreams, is that everything's done at once. Granted, that's more expensive at one time, but in the long scheme of things, if you did 3 phases over 5 years, I think it would end up being more expensive at that point in time. It's, the architectural company is telling us that as a 2-rink system, as it sits, as you look at the picture now, it's about 14 to 18 months to build. Obviously pending good weather for a majority of those months. So that's, you know, that timeframe is pretty small compared to what I would've thought it would've been. But, again, my dreams are to have it all done at once. Make it easier to move into, say, September, when it's 2 sheets of ice and instead of just 1, and having to figure out when do we add the next one, when can we afford to add the next one, such and such.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, folks, I appreciate your time.
Thanks, CJ.
Thank
If you
you.
get any more questions, Nicholas has my email, and so just, you can shoot me an email.
All right, perfect.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I'll leave.
Next we'll move on to our downtown lots, the tax increment financing district.
Okay, so Nancy presented to the board last month on the issue of interest accruing on EDA loans to TIF District 1-17. The board decided to move forward with a resolution suspending further interest accruing on that loan, and so that's what we'll be voting on at this meeting. and then we'll just have further discussion on, you know, what the EDA would like to do moving forward with these lots. And maybe we can, get the resolution out of the way and then talk on that, or
Okay. So we just wanna go right into the resolution?
Sure.
So, casting resolution number 11.03-20, to suspend the interest payments due to the City of Casson Economic Development Authority by Tax Increment Financing District number 1-17. So, looking for a motion to either approve or deny this resolution.
I think based on our previous discussion a month ago, that I'll motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes, thank you.
So one thing that I talked to the finance director about was, you know, is there any benefit or usefulness to decertifying the TIF right now? And, really there isn't until we decide, you know, the EDA decides what they wanna do moving forward, then we can, you know, assess whether decertifying the TIF is beneficial or not, but just leaving it is now, doesn't limit ourselves, and it doesn't cost anything extra, and we might be able to use it still to our benefit. You know, there's a possibility of a sale or development that could pay back some of the loan. The only thing is that we're probably beyond the date where we can use the TIF to provide a subsidy. So if development occurred, we couldn't, you know, use the revenue generated from TIF to provide a subsidy, but we could maybe use it to pay some of the loan back. So that's kind of where that stands. So let's, for future plans of the parcel, we had previously discussed turning it into a pocket park with low cost and low activation measures, with the idea that if an interested party came in and wanted to buy the site or develop it, that it would be a, you know, it would be easier to just transfer that use over to them. Another thing to note is that the parcel zone Z1 or C1, and so there's really a wide array of uses that can go in there. So we're not really limited in that aspect. One thing, I didn't get around to calling the adjacent property owners to ask about, you know, what their interest was in the past and why
I
they...
did.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
Okay.
I was able to speak with one of them, and they have no interest.
Yeah.
The other one I have not found there at all, but Anthony had no further interest.
Yeah, and one thing is, you know, if they might not be interested in developing those lots and might just be interested in parking, which is, I'm not sure what the EDA feels about that, but that wouldn't necessarily generate any income or development, so, just open that up for discussion now.
Unless we get a municipal parking ramp going.
Yeah.
Narrow little guy. But, yeah, and I know that I'd asked, if we could have the brief that we had done, and so thank you for providing that. I mean, I do think one update that has happened is that the tree's gone, looks like, so.
Mhm.
So that's been done, that was on the list here of things to do, but, I mean, I drove by it again here just before our meeting, just to get an idea again of the size and shape of it, and I just have I guess I have a hard time believing personally that we're gonna end up with somebody building a little thing right there. I guess it seems to me that we're, you know, part of our overall goal with Main Street too is kind of that, generating like that welcoming community feel. I think that can be furthered by doing kind of like the the pocket park concept, depending on how it's done. I guess that's kind of where I land on it, and we have some of that info here then on how how some of that can be
Well,
done.
and one thing I was thinking is, you know, does the EDA want to market this, you know, make a push over the next couple months to a year, see if there's anything, I can reach out to developers who would be interested on some Main Street properties, just, you know, let them know that this is a possibility, and if that doesn't really, you know, after a hard push of trying to sell the lots, if that doesn't come up with anything, then we can move forward with other options, or, yeah, I mean, it's up to the EDA, but that's just one idea that I had, that moving forward, we could actively market the lots, and just see what happens. Because I know we've been passively marketing them over the last couple of years, but
Has the pricing changed at all?
I don't believe so. I believe we've lowered them
Make me an offer.
significantly.
The two lots combined is what, 44 feet wide, give or take? How many parking stalls could you actually put in there?
5.
Five,
Is
so
that
they-
Yeah.
Not many.
Yeah, so it's not enough.
Do you wanna park right up to the sidewalk?
But I just saying,
Yeah.
there's always a lack of parking on Main Street more than, you know, there's other empty lots and sitting on Main Street right now that are bigger and more susceptible for development than that,
Mhm.
you know, and throwing a park down there, there's nowhere for people to park to go use it, and it's a busy street, so,
Well, they could park on the back side,
well,
toward the track.
Yeah, there's parking back there.
It's pretty deep,
Yeah.
but it's somebody else's property back there.
So it's city-owned.
No,
City-
it's
city
pretty
walk straight
owned.
back,
Yeah.
Okay.
And so that's something to consider too, is, you know, there's also those lots, you know, behind that could factor into something. It's not likely that we could get a large developer across all of those parcels, just because it goes around buildings,
Mhm.
you know, in between them, so as a, you know, bundling all of those parcels together doesn't, in my perspective, make it, you know, more marketable or developable.
Be nice to see a beautiful gazebo with a little stage so you could have outdoor events in downtown as opposed to just in the North Park.
Mhm.
You know, Friday night music, talent shows, something to bring more people into the downtown, you know, with the little lights on, you know, all sorts of
Yeah.
fun stuff you could do with that.
Well, I mean, like with the chamber, right, we're kind of planning time for the Christmas and Casson
Yeah.
festival, you know, like that would be an example of something that could be,
Yeah.
you know, that'd be another time to use it. You know, if we decide to, you know, I don't know, if we decided to do more with like, you know, whether it's like Memorial Day or 4th of July kind of activities down there, you know, if Chamber was gonna get into that area, you know, into that kind of field, that'd be
nice-
another.
Nice to have something that could use.
Well, and so with like this, you know, brief the downtown lots committee put together, the idea was that, you know, it's low-level activation to start, and if it, you know, doesn't sell after a year to a couple of years, then you can start doing more permanent, you know, public realm improvements to that space. So to kind of just commit it wholly as a, you know, a pocket park. And so there's still that possibility too, we could actively market it for a year, put in some picnic tables for now, and, you know, see where that takes us.
That's something you could also piggyback with, community groups too.
Mhm.
You know, whether it be the Lions, Boy Scouts, whatever, name it, as far as improvements or maintenance or whatever.
Right, I think we talked about like an Eagle Scout project,
Yeah.
was an example of
For
a
sure.
Lions Club project, yeah.
It's a great idea.
Okay.
I mean, I think, I get the sense are you looking for a little bit more of a direction from us as a
Yeah, and I
board?
mean, if we wanna kind of pick up where we left off with this, and I can try to actively, I can, I'm gonna update I've got some lots to post for the property inventory on the website, and I can throw these in here as well, and, I could do a Facebook post, send out an email with some info on it to, prospective developers, while we also, see what kind of low-level activation we can do in the meantime.
And as far as a park goes, we need to have some kind of signage or enforce that people shouldn't let their dogs crap there and just leave it.
Yeah.
That's the biggest problem, nobody goes over and use that bench because Mike from across the street lets his dog crap over there and doesn't clean it up.
Okay.
Be a good spot for a pet waste station.
Not you.
Well.
Well, not you.
I think there is an ordinance that you're supposed to clean up your.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good
Okay.
job.
Well, if that's all the discussion then we can move forward to the
Okay.
next item.
We'll move on to the Southwest land discussion. You can see we got a map in here.
Yeah, so Brandon's here to discuss the concept plan and answer any questions that the board might have. Just to note that this was based on the sketches that you submitted, so the most recent discussion we had about incorporating housing and commercial industrial development in the first phase isn't reflected on here, but we can always amend that, so.
Well, the first thing I see right away is where the Youth Hockey Association wanted to go. We've got it on here as a potentially R3 zone.
Yeah, and that we can always amend that, so.
Any of this land would be reclassed as the development holding district as part of the zoning code changes that the council approved at the last meeting, and so I think, I just, for your own mindset, just don't worry about the zoning aspect of it quite yet, because that can be changed. It's more of the layout that, well, the bigger concern is maybe the pond I have, in that location. To me, it's we know that is a very low area. I don't think with the design that they have here that it would necessarily absolutely restrict it. Might require them to change their parking lot configuration a little bit, but that is something that we maybe have a good question for Brandon.
It does make sense from an ice arena standpoint, if they wanted to put it out in that area, and if we wanted to partner with them, because we have land, they don't, that you would wanna have it visible from the highway, if you're gonna have somebody sponsor the amount. They wouldn't,
Right.
hide it back here where this stuff is behind everything, you're not gonna get as much sponsorship.
Exactly.
So.
I don't necessarily think that a pond would necessarily be a negative either, though.
No, that'd be all right.
I think
Because
we
if you
need
had
it.
a nice pond in front, you
Just
could
to
still
shift
have
this
good,
way.
yeah, you could still have good visible exposure, and
They
it would
would
almost
go
be.
Here, they would just move down behind.
Exactly, you could shift down some, and this is obviously not to scale or anything like that either, we don't know exactly what the.
Plus
plan
their
is.
sign actually, if they're putting it up, could be right behind them.
Well, that's what I mean, is right, I think you'd still get good exposure for it, it might actually be kind of a pretty amenity, really, but, or it could be.
That could be our third sheet of ice in the winter time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See?
Right size.
There you go,
Yeah.
that's right.
Don't kid yourself.
Outdoor tournament, hey.
That'd be perfect.
We're gonna turn the faucet on if we're gonna fill it up in winter, but, Brandon, I don't know if you just wanna talk about some of the engineering challenges you ran into.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, for those who have not met, I'm Brandon Theobald, the WH Gas and Company Consulting City Engineer. You guys tasked us with putting together this concept plan. It is ultimately a draft, obviously, we got some discussion already partaking here on what you guys wanna see. So let me attach it first and foremost from an engineering standpoint, what some of the limitations are, what some of the talking points are, and then we can maybe move into a land use. Because as far as the engineering and the land use, they're kind of separate. Really, what we would probably be doing here, what we'd be showing on this end figure, is kind of irrelevant to the land use. So, we got some options there. So when we first looked at this, I think you guys called it different phases, but I'll go to the figure here. The residential phase, which is off the southwest corner of Windsor Court there, that ultimately is a ridge along that property line. That's where the trees are separating the I-1 and the R3. Again, this is just our draft figure. So everything to the left of that line, the residential, all drains that northwest corner where that pond is located. Everything to the east, the I-1 district drains to the right, to the east, to the other pond there in the drainageway that comes through that property. So when I look at it from an engineering standpoint, really this project could be broken up into two phases, hence why we had residential on the one phase of the west side and industrial on the east side. That really works out well for our road configuration. So maybe I'll attack the west project first. You can see, and I mentioned a little bit in the presentation from the ice arena, 8th Street Southwest, which is on the north side of Windsor Court Cemetery, kind of a frontage road to our Highway 14. That road on the 8th Street, which is in the city limits through the cemetery property, is in pretty rough shape. The road along 240th Avenue, the west side of the project there, that I believe is in the township, is still a gravel road. So you can see on our figure there, we have that hatched in as a new road. With the assumption there that any development along here would be reconstructing that road or rebuilding the aggregate road on the west side of the project there. You can see a green and a blue line there, that SAN is a sanitary sewer, that W is a water line. You can see we have water available on the kind of the north side of Windsor Court there that ultimately goes underneath Highway 14 and kind of into town. So if we were to develop anything along the cemetery, the west side of the cemetery, again, the whole residential side there, we'd have to bring that water main all along 8th Street there. If you're familiar with the area, there's actually a ridge line there in the cemetery, so we'd kind of be digging through a hill, then going against grade to kind of the pond area. And the discussion was, well, can we serve that pond area? And really that area ultimately kind of gets too low, we didn't get into the details yet, but we're gonna struggle to serve that with sewer and water. Specifically, our sanitary sewer is gonna come out of the ground, we're not gonna be able to get buildings or ice arenas into that sanitary sewer line, in that very northwest corner. So that's why we show a pond there. Obviously, the stormwater would drain there, that's kind of the lay of the land, so that's where the pond would be. You know, we didn't size it, we just show it on here as a conceptual pond. And then our water and sewer comes along the west side of the cemetery there, and just kind of runs through the site. It isn't really a concern as long as we can get it there, because everything drains again to the northwest corner there. What we show there in the residential area, just to give you some sizing, you may notice the large apartment complex. That is actually a snippet from the apartment on the north side of Highway 14 there, just to give you kind of some size and space of what we could potentially be looking at there. The other brown figures there, so to be townhouses, we understood that there was some interest in some townhouses there. We've seen a big push in the housing industry to have townhouses, slabs on grades, patio homes, so I'm assuming that would still be very marketable for the city. We have a 21,000 square foot apartment there just south of the cemetery. That's a pretty sizable apartment building, just again to give you some feel of how things may lay in there. We do have some parkland there between the cemetery and Windsor Court. Assuming that we would be building to the south property line to facilitate development to the south, so we have extended that road there. Then maybe that's the west side, or the one phase that could be completed. The other phase we show is industrial there, and we show some different size building there. You can kind of compare it to like the A&A shop there, just off the Manorville Avenue there on the right side, to give you kind of a size and space of how those lots may work out. And I'll tell you, whenever we do an industrial park, we never pick the right size lots and right size buildings. So it's a little difficult, but when we get there, we'll worry about that at that time. We did line that road up with South Fork Drive. Just planning 101 tells you to line your roads up so we can have one nice intersection there at Manorville Avenue. There is some talk of Manorville Avenue ultimately turning into a county road potentially, so there may be some higher traffic there. So I think lining up with South Fork Drive would be the right thing to do there. It does kind of pinch the north side of that road between Windsor Court and that east-west road there. So that could maybe jog to the south. Again, if we got to a project, we'd look at that a little more in depth and see what sort of lot sizing we'd want there. We do show a little buffer there between Windsor Court and the residential on the west side and the industrial. The pond there probably looks a little oversized for our area. We do have an agreement with the property between the ponds and Manorville Avenue regarding some ponding there. And the property there that's currently being marketed between Windsor Court, 8th Street, Manorville Avenue, and our pond there. So the city, in that agreement, I think is obligated to provide some ponding for that property, so that's why I have them a little larger there. And then those ponds probably would be serving some area to the south too, so a design element that we didn't want to really get into too much, because we did not size those ponds, so they could potentially be smaller, but just something we didn't get to that point in this figure here. You will notice east of the ponds to that parcel there, we do have some right-of-way that we do not control. So the assumption there is we would have to work with that property owner. Either they develop and would build that section of roadway, or we'd work with them to install that section of roadway there across that parcel. So that would be kind of somewhat of a hindrance of the feasibility of constructing this. Whenever we build roads that don't really serve our property, ultimately that's just cost that we have out there that isn't a direct benefit to the development. And that same thing for 8th Street there. I mentioned the $800 to $1 million project just to build 8th Street and then the road to the west, or 240th, ultimately to get that water and sewer to the property. So we're already $800 to $1 million in just getting to the property, so that's just gonna be a cost that'll have to be addressed, which ultimately, again, kinda hinders the viability of, a development. Why did we show it industrial? I think Nicholas had it in the packet. There is some grants available for industrial parks, or if you have an end user that wants to come to town and develop or grow and move into an industrial park, there's some money through deed. It's a pretty attractive program. We use it in other communities. So that's why I think industrial, from a engineering standpoint and a feasibility of making this happen, is a little more viable in that area. For commercial, I did receive your different land use options there, and I'll say there was not necessarily a consensus from what we saw, but changing that land use again is kind of irrelevant for the figure, because I think the road, we end up with an east-west road. We have some road going up to 240th, whether the cul-de-sac that shows the townhouse there goes away and it's the ice arena, that really doesn't affect, you know, what we end up building. I think it's good to get kind of a lay of land in here, know if there's gonna be an east-west road, know that we have a break between the industrial and potentially residential, to the west, just to get a feel for the engineering of it and some of the advantages and disadvantages for the site. So, if it changed to all commercial or industrial, you know, we may just shift some roads around and accommodate lots when we get to a final design and get some funding in place. So, I don't wanna get hung up on land use. But again, whatever you guys think would be pertinent, let's, take your comments and then kinda finalize the draft. I think is the goal today, so. That's the quick spiel on what we did, so happy to answer any questions or go in any other discussions.
Anybody got any questions for Brandon, or?
Well, I know Tom had a few questions he had related to me.
Yeah.
I know that we mostly talked a little bit about land use and things like that, so.
Yeah, well, I asked about the ponding, 'cause I wasn't, and I think Brandon's discussion already kinda answered that, 'cause I looked at it and I was like, that seems like a lot of pond, but, I mean, that kinda answers the question in terms of servicing, some of the neighbor in the future, some to the south there, and then up on the north, the one that I also looked to there was, 'cause if you look at my example, I was thinking.
It's pulling up right now, yeah.
You know, I was just thinking highway visibility, but I didn't take into account how low the spot was in terms of servicing it with water and sewer, 'cause, you know, as soon as you do that, you're talking, well, let's pop another 150,000 lift stations right there, just to service sewer right there, which, is moot if we end up doing a giant, hockey, facility there anyways, so. But, anyways, those were my and I think so my questions on the ponding were all addressed.
Sure.
I mean, I guess the first thing I see too is like, it does allow us to segment pretty nicely with, if we were to use like BDPI for some of the
Absolutely.
infrastructure requirements. You know, like the infrastructure or the industrial kind of being pieced together there in a single phase, that works well for deed, I know. And then if it ends up being the hockey thing, up in that northwest corner, I guess we'd have to look to see if that's eligible or not. I don't know that it is.
It's not. I looked at entertainment centers, which is what I consider it to be, and it's not
Yeah.
eligible for BDPI, so, otherwise
Yeah.
that was a thought, but no, it doesn't qualify.
Yeah, 'cause I would think maybe up more up there, you'd be talking more like USDA Community Facilities Program. And sometimes if you have like kind of a community nonprofit function, they'll consider a small part of it as kind of as a grant portion, but usually you're talking low rate fixed financing, but.
Yeah, I don't know, that would be a large commitment. I don't know that, you know, and it would all depend on ownership as well.
Right.
'Cause and the council members are here, the mayor's here. To me, I think part of their consideration with the hockey facility would be, is there any cost savings to the city with their own facility here in town? If this facility were to go in as private ownership,
Mhm.
I think the council has more of an impetus to support it than if they were gonna continue to, have a large degree of city involvement with the project, so.
Right, but I think you can use community facilities in terms of infrastructure financing of more of like this, you know, when they talk about public-private operations.
Yeah, I mean,
you
there's
still
some
see that
options, there are some
sometimes
options
possible,
there, it's
so.
possible. Like I said, I think, it would just, there are a lot of hoops that we'd have to jump through with
Yeah.
that, so, but certainly it's, something to look at.
Yeah, but point is I see, I guess, the way it's kinda segmented up is that, I think especially on the BDPI, it's nice and clean cut, but, and then even a little bit of potential there for some of the USDA rural development financing if you do the hockey thing and it ends up being a good fit, but so I guess I see clean phases is what I see, which is good.
The only concern I have, and I know it's a land use and a lot of hurdles to jump to get there, but if you put the hockey rink in the northwest corner, and you have industrial here, kinda putting all the residential on an island, as in you're going all the way through industrial and commercial to get to it. And you got a couple other real estate people here, as far as the marketability goes, it's not gonna help it.
Mm-mm.
Not saying it couldn't be developed that way, but it really pushes it back. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the last, EDA meeting, you know, they had talked about taking those lots on the north side of this new potential road and turning those into kind of, more dense apartment style. And I don't know if that changes the mentality, you know, if we say, okay, we're gonna pop in four more of these 21 square foot apartment complexes, you know, one on this side, one on this side, one on this side, one on this side, just put them in there. And if it was just that south side, that was kind of the, potential alternate use. And, I mean, to me, when we think industrial, I think a lot of, warehousing is probably kind of the best bet for Casson. Something like he talked about the A&A building.
Right.
And to a large degree, that's a shop building with a lot of almost warehousing kind of use. And to me, like, if you popped in 4 of those, I don't know that it would really hurt the housing market as much as if it was a, you know, a meatpacking plant or something. Obviously, that's gonna have a huge
Right.
impact, but I don't think that we're looking at those kind of things. I mean,
Yeah.
if I could throw in, you know, 4 nice buildings like A&A, man, I'd be thrilled.
Yeah.
Because that would be, you know, 8 to 10 jobs per, you know, sustainable, you know, feasible for our community to support probably.
I'm just thinking though, if we're talking puzzle pieces, if you move the industrial back to this corner and here, you know, South Fork is expanding.
Yeah.
And you got residential across the street, you know, as far as a similar use, you're just kinda blending it across the street.
The problem is that, you know, that really hamstrings the city in terms of any kind of industrial growth ever.
Oh, sure.
You know, partly because, for example, warehousing or trucking or distribution or something like that would be much better served being closer to the you know, the commerce node, the transportation node.
Right.
I know the county engineer brought this up to me very clearly when I talked to him about it. You know, he doesn't really like the fact that this is gonna be housing down here, period. But I said, well, that's private ownership, but, you know, it is what it is. You know, his concern is that you really hamstring, I mean, Casson literally will never develop a diversified tax base then, because, you know, the property will always be more valuable. That's housing, which is true. And I'm not saying that it isn't, but it'd be, you know, and I mean, in the long run, it's not my land, you know, it's a matter of just trying to think of, is there a way to possibly have that diversified tax base at all? I know we talked to Mr. Bigelow and his father, last week about their commercial property on the other side, that's kind of over on this side. And that's the other reason we're looking at industrial warehousing as opposed to commercial, because there is property that is for sale, that's commercial, that hasn't really sold. And I don't know how hard, you know, he's not giving it away, which is what something we might end up looking at doing. Just to incentivize somebody to come here, we probably aren't gonna get $100,000 for a lot here. You know, we're gonna get, you know, build the building and we'll give you a tax incentive too. But I don't know, those are all fair points, so.
And it doesn't necessarily have to be kind of the lower density residential with like the townhomes. If it did end up, you know, being the hockey arena commercial and the industrial, you still have high density, which I think those uses have less of an impact on, instead of, as if you were gonna buy a home you wanna live in for 30 years and see an investment out of, where you don't get that with apartments as much. It's kind of, you know, intermediary housing where you stay there until you can afford, you know, a home in town, so.
I mean, I guess I kind of look at it sort of like West Circle Drive. If you go in back behind Hy-Vee, you've got Hy-Vee, then you're gonna have these massive apartment complexes, and then you go to single family.
Right.
And that's kind of when I look at it, that's how I sort of see it transition, is, you know, you've got some, you know, warehousing, you've got some apartment complexes which are screened, and then you get into the single family or the townhomes. But I certainly think it's a valid point.
Brandon, if, for some like the rough infrastructure costs, you know, like if it's broken up into these 2 pieces, just to, 'cause like that top side, you were saying it was about 800 to $1 million just to kinda get to that northwest corner. What's on the, I mean, what's like some rough figures in terms of the, kinda that south side?
We generally use about $800 a linear foot to rebuild a road, install the sewer and water and storm sewer. So I'd have to, I don't know exactly the length we have here, but, 3, 6. I think, the east phase would be like 1.3 to 1.5, if my math is right, feels right. For the east side, I don't know how, I'd have to look at the mass grading to see what that may kind of throw that number in whack, and then the pond construction wouldn't really be part of that. Then the other side would probably be maybe double that, so we'd get double the amount of road. Maybe not quite. And then to Tim's point, you know, if that ice arena went away, now we're not building that public road through there. That could be, you know, part of the ice arena, or if that was a larger apartment complex, that'd be a private road, it'd be part of the apartments complex responsibility to build their private roads in there, so that would maybe change kind of how that would be marketed. But rough number, maybe that 1.5 or 1.8 range maybe on the west side there. The other thing with residential, it's a little more, I'll call it sticky, or a little more complex with cities to have end partners in the dense residential. Game's a little different than, you know, we talked about the BDPI with the industrial. We get that grant, we build the industrial park, then we market it ourselves. It becomes a little more problematic with larger apartment complexes, and we just don't see towns do it as much as towns do with the industrial commercial side. So, something to think about too, how that ice arena may change that. Maybe this ice arena goes in and ends up all being industrial, and the residential goes away. I think, what may go in first may change some of the future land use. And I think what also should drive it too is not necessarily what we think looks good on the map, but more marketability too. You know, as I brought up on the commercial availability, you know, east of Manitoba Avenue, whether we wanna compete with that, I think is something to think about once we get to a project. Another thing too, I'll mention too, is the future land use. There was some parkland in this area, so I think that's something that the city, should at least acknowledge the fact that there's conflict in our future land use and what this figure shows. Just so people don't think that we're moving forward with this and the park department's upset, or the park board's upset that park's out of the question yet. So that's something I want everybody to be sensitive to, because we have different entities within the city may have different ideas for this parcel too, so. But plans change all the time, so. So again, looking for any comments to change this land use, scrap it, start over, get rid of townhouses, whatever you guys want. You know, we can get rid of the townhouses in that cul-de-sac in the northwest corner and put maybe flexible, or if you guys want me to put an ice rink on there, I'm happy to do that. I don't want to be jumping in too far. I'm happy to do whatever you guys think.
Honestly, right now, I'd say you just leave it the way it is and wait and see how things pan out, because we have no idea. Just because they come and say they want, come up with 12.9 million, another million for water, we just gotta wait and see a little bit. That's just my opinion. I mean, you don't wanna spend much more money until we've got a good start, a good idea, a good plan. We can at least put feelers out there and see what people think, what businesses think.
Yeah, I mean, I know at the last meeting we had, that, you know, there was the conversation about that property on the north side of the new road, you know, on the south of the parcel there. Instead of having those 9,000 square foot building, the 6,000, they had talked about doing more like the apartment style. I mean, is that something we could shift into that usage at least, or not?
I mean, I think even if you did the exact same 25,000 square foot building south of the road there, I mean, these 6 and 9, could be apartment kind of style right there, and that allows for some of that shift you were talking about from single family to multifamily, or to kind of like the large multifamily then to commercial.
Okay.
But I don't know if, I mean, I think kind of what Brandon was pointing out though is, on some of the land use stuff, I guess it's a little bit, really we're looking at kind of like, I think this map is where the real value I see is just in knowing kind of where we have for infrastructure connections, water and sewer and some of the roadway, and then the ponding requirements. And then if we, you know, if instead of 4 smaller commercial units to the north of that road there, wanna do 2 larger apartment complexes, I think that's not a lot of changing, but
Sure.
that would, if you did that though, right there, that would create an issue with BDPI eligibility, 'cause they get a little jumpy at deed if you have housing at all, in a BDPI serviced area. And if we're talking $1.3 to $1.5 million of infrastructure costs there, I mean, we're maxing out the program at $500,000 match funding. I mean, which is, you know, then it's like, well, maybe then it does make the most sense to look at these, you know, smaller commercial properties if it's gonna make a difference of $500,000 or not, you know, for.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a good question, if you've worked with it. I mean, when I used it, we had a mixed use. So we ran the road out there justifying it with the south side, usage was industrial, and the north side it ended up being housing. And I didn't have a problem with it then, but you know, that's part of the reason why I think it is, if we're gonna, it'll all look at that, we have to have some industrial component to say, okay, yep, we're gonna get that road out to these lots. Now, if on the north side of it ended up being something else, I'm not sure if that'd be a problem or not, but I definitely see what you're saying about the funding side of it, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think if the BEPI area is considered to be on both sides, and if, being that we own both sides of the road, I think they would look at it.
Okay.
Especially in terms of competitiveness of the application too, if we say, well, we're just doing the south, I think that also takes away from the competitiveness of our application, depending on how many applications and level of funding they have in that year.
Or having an end user too.
Yeah.
If there's an end user that's coming and or expanding and wants to move there, that's
Yeah.
gonna make the application a lot more attractive. Whereas
Yeah.
if we just say, well, we're gonna build it and
Yeah.
market it later, that's a little different
Right.
application, so.
Yeah,
So Tim, did you have an end user in yours?
Yeah, we had Kibble, it was an ag manufacturer.
Had a fair amount of jobs associated with it?
Sure, it was sort of, not really, it was, they were combining a bunch of locations into one, so.
Okay. You probably justified they needed to condense, so as they may look for somewhere else, so.
Right.
So if we had an end user in industrial, I think we could get this pulled off and
Yeah.
get that first phase done, I really do.
Yeah.
Well, again, you need the end user, and you need them to be committed to, you know, moving there and,
Right.
you know, build it. So I think, to me, that's the marketing step, and it's a very attractive program, Tom's familiar with it, I'm familiar with it, and Tim's familiar with it, so.
I'm wondering, so, in terms of kind of a next phase for this, would it be possible to switch this to just maybe some commercial, the northwest
Yeah,
cul-de-sac?
absolutely.
And then, would it be possible to estimate out what the costs of each kind of, for the infrastructure development?
Yep.
What that would entail for each kind of phase that we?
Yep. These are all aligned and say industrial phase, and then the east side and then the west side, you know, we'll chart the numbers, yeah. So, change the townhouse on the south side of the 2,100 square foot apartment building, change those out to another apartment complex, and then change the cul-de-sac street to commercial. Hearing that correctly?
Just see what that looks like.
And then come back to the next meeting with some more numbers and.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I can, go from there.
Alright.
Yeah, and then, I think after that, we could probably start looking more,
Turf here?
you know, what steps we need
Yeah, you
to
see
take to
that
move
driveway
forward
there.
with finding an end user and that sort of stuff.
Absolutely, okay.
Alright, thank you, Brandon. So,
That would
thanks,
make
Brandon.
sense.
We're gonna move on next to our CEDA contract.
So this is just in the agenda for everyone to see, no action needed at the meeting today. Maybe it has some action on it for approval at the next meeting. So it's in there for everybody to review.
Then we'll move next to the coordinator's report.
Okay, so business outreach, Tim and I met with Tony and Joel Bigelow. They wanted to discuss the development of affordable housing in Casson. They expressed some concern that there might be some infrastructure needs that they have to account for that would increase the cost of housing that they want to keep affordable. They were just interested in what offerings the city has in terms of, you know, TIF or tax abatement that could keep the housing at a certain level of affordability. So we just had some discussions on that. Chewy's Bakery is now open, which is great. I don't know, hope you've all visited. I had a pretty tasty treat from there. Trail Creek Coffee Roasters wanted me to bring up with the EDA. They're interested in exploring a contract to deed option for the building they're currently renting from the city. I believe they wanna put in some, you know, more expensive improvements to the building, and they would feel more comfortable, you know, moving forward with that if they knew that they would end up owning the building in the long run, so. I don't know if we wanna discuss that any further right now, or.
Well, I mean, I guess it's up to you guys, but I mean, I think it's not a bad move, I mean, I think our goal would be to get that building off of our rolls if we could, so.
Absolutely.
I don't know, I think we could probably enter into a negotiation with them.
Sure.
Yes.
Online property inventory, just discuss that, I've got some properties I need to post up, I just need to figure out the best way to present those on the website in the PDF format, so hopefully plan to have that done very soon here. And market potential studies, so the CEDA Market Intelligence dashboard is ready to use. I showed Tim an example, I think from EOTA, where it shows the market potential of certain industries. CEDA's gonna have a training on that tool for all of our employees this week, so I'll have more knowledge on how we can use that tool for the city of Casson. That's it for the coordinator's report.
Okay. Administrators report?
You've got my report there in your packet, we're after 1 o'clock, so I know that we had 1.8 million absentee ballots cast as of this morning, so high voter turnout, so that's kinda what we're dealing with today, so I'm sure everybody will be watching that tonight. No. No, we're not watching it tonight, that's fair too, that's fair, no, I can hear you there.
Oh, it is.
Thank you, Tim. Other business, I think. Okay, any items for December? And maybe the numbers from Brandon?
And there's, some 2020 tax abatement that needs approval for Gibbs Partnership and the Lead Marketing and Investments. I'll have that, I'll check whether they pay their taxes, and I'll bring that to the EDA for approval.
Okay, perfect. Ain't nothing else, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.